Hello, welcome back to Practice Security. My name is Matt Johnston, and once again, I greatly appreciate you spending some time with me to talk about some topics that I think are super important for us, especially as parents in this digital age, and as we're trying to work out shepherding our kids and keeping them safe and secure from all kinds of threats and problems that can come to them via the internet and the online spaces. In this video, I want to quickly talk about an emerging controversy serves as a great example of something we talk about in our digital health seminar for parents. It is the idea of how exposure to certain content online is the means by which our kids are influenced and radicalized. There's different ways that they're exposed to things online, but it is ideas and stories and themes and images and words and language that creeps into the things that our kids are consuming over via the internet, via their apps and games and videos that they're watching and whatever they're engaging with via their devices. But it's these different things that kind of eke in through the technology layer into our kids' minds that is influencing their worldview. It's influencing how they understand the world. It's influencing what they know of as normal. It is embedding into them the stories of our civilization, of our culture, of this time in human history, and all of that is building within them a worldview, a paradigm through which they're going to understand and interpret all things, which is why telling the right stories is so important, and telling stories that teach our kids virtues is so important, and truth is so important. But I want to touch on that a little bit because in our seminar for parents on digital health, we talk a lot about the issue of how radicalization starts with awareness. It starts with exposure. Kids get exposed to some piece of content that is controversial or is contrary to your value systems or contrary to your worldview that you want your kids to understand and grow up under. They get access to it, they become curious about it, and they start pursuing it and thinking about it now that they're aware of it. And as they wrestle with that thing that they've now become aware of and they process through it, if they're not guided in that processing and directed back to truth, it is going to solidify within them again, and influence their worldview and their overall understanding of the world. And so right now there's two stories that are being retold, two major stories that are in the process of being retold, that are an example of changing the narrative in our kids. They're great examples of how influence seeks into our kids and then can radicalize them. So the first is the retelling of Narnia. There's not a lot of details about this yet because the movies are not out yet, but there's a lot of controversy already and some great jokes that are being tossed around the internet. But there is great concern about the retelling of the Narnian story today through a work that is in production right now. There's great concern that it is going to dramatically change the narrative and change the message and change the story that is supposed to be formational for our kids, especially those in the Christian community. We know that the Narnian story is a great story to raise our kids knowing, because it does form in them the proper worldview. And by activists taking that story and then changing the narrative, changing aspects of it, introducing different characters in different ways, or introducing different themes or images, they're fundamentally changing the narrative that's going to form our kids. And then today, there's a similar controversy. This is around a movie known as Steps. I'm reading it off a different screen here. Steps is a new animated film that follows Cinderella's evil stepsisters, who are depicted as kind and misunderstood. And this is a great example of how, I don't know how to say this, the cultural influences of our age, Hollywood, if you want to call it that, but this is being produced by Netflix. This is a great example of how the cultural influences of the day, influencers of the day, are trying to retell stories. They're trying to reframe things in a way that makes our kids, or causes our kids, to change the premise of the story, change their understanding of what it means to be a villain. They're normalizing villains. They're making us sympathize with villains. They're making bad actions explainable and justifiable and normalizing them and making and changing the narrative. Like, it's no longer immoral for those characters to act the way that they did. We just misunderstood them, and they were acting in a way that was acceptable because of their story, and so therefore we shouldn't rebuke them and correct them and and push them out of as outcasts or as bad influences. We should understand them and adopt them and make their behaviors okay and acceptable in the context of the overall story. These are just great examples of how the formation of our kids through these stories can be poisoned, and it can lead them towards radicalization. It influences their minds and their understandings towards a radicalized paradigm that no longer carries forward the core tenets and premise of the worldview that we want our kids to be formed by. And so we talk about in our digital health seminar, the answer to this from a lot of the technology providers is to use third-party software or even the built-in controls on our kids' technology to limit and control the access they have to online content, online harmful content. And I've actually written articles and did podcast episodes based on how to do this for the iPhone and Android, as well as how to leverage two third-party products called one's called Bark and one's called Custodio. I did product reviews on each of those, but really just reviewed the premise of how do you lock down your kid's smartphone to prevent them from being able to access harmful content online that's going to expose them to ideology that is contrary to your worldview or your systems of beliefs. And in all those presentations, I talk about this fundamental flaw with that approach. Most of these content filters or these tools that are designed to prevent what kind of content your kids can access online, a lot of them use the TV rating system or the content rating system that's designed to convey, whether or not the media is appropriate for different maturity levels or age ranges of the audience. So, we used to have the movie rating system, which was very simple. It was like G, PG, PG-13, and R, I think originally, and then we added some more ratings within those brackets. And the original goal there was to essentially warn the audience that the nature of the media, the subject matter, and even the words used and the images portrayed, it was written for an audience of different maturity levels, an audience that could accept different, how should I say this, different levels of content because of their maturity, because of their worldview, their station in life, their age, what they've most likely experienced, the growth that they've most likely had. All that to say, like, we used to have a very simple rating system that portrayed to us some understanding of the nature of the subject matter that's going to be presented to us via the media. And that's been expanded now in the streaming media world and in the TV world that uses a similar rating system. And now there's a whole bunch of ratings for content, online content. There's like Y and 14, I think, is one I saw the other day. There's 18. There's a bunch of there's MA, which is mature audiences only. There's a bunch of other ratings. And when you use these different content filtering tools or settings on your kid's device, their smartphone or their tablet, and you use those to restrict access to different online content, a lot of time is based on those rating systems. It will say, don't let my kid access any video on Netflix that has a rating of MA, or only let my kid access videos on their Kindle that are rated TV PG or rated TVG or whatever the rating level would be. And that's how the parental controls are designed to give you the ability to restrict access for your kids or to authorize access for your kids through the device, is based on those rating levels. Well, here's the big problem. I think you can probably already see it. The problem is the content that is being developed and presented as suitable for our kids within those different age ranges. The content, the stories themselves have been corrupted with ideology. The stories themselves are being retold with radicalization built into them. They're being told in a way that is bundled and prepared for audiences of those ages and maturity levels, as the ratings indicate. But it is poisoned stories that are designed to influence the minds of our kids, to make them aware of things that are potentially harmful or contrary to your value system or my value system that we want to raise our kids under. They are attempts to do radicalization of our kids through the content and via rating systems that tell parents that this particular video or movie or whatever is safe and suitable for audiences of these age ranges or maturity levels, when in fact the very nature of the story is radical. It is to radicalize. It's the mission that they're after, which is what's happening with with Steps, and which is allegedly what's happening with Narnia, is these stories are being retold, and they're carrying in the retelling radicalization in their very nature. And so as parents, we just can't rely on that. You can't rely on technology that says we're going to give you access to restrict, we're going to give you the ability as a parent to restrict access that your kids have to harmful content based on these TV rating systems, because the rating systems are being weaponized fundamentally by the content curators. The ones that are creating the content are gaming the system to get their harmful content to your kids, package it away that our kids are going to naturally like it and think about it and remember it and absorb it and internalize it, like through cartoons, through Steps. I'm looking at a picture over here, animated cartoons. The kids are going to see their characters in the cartoon. They're going to think about those characters. They're going to dress up like the characters. I'm sure Disney or Netflix or whoever's producing this is going to sell toys and costumes that kids can play with and dress up in. And so they're going to take on the personality and the attributes of the story, and they're going to incorporate those into their life. And that's how radicalization works. And you just need to know this as parents. So all that to say, if you're relying on third-party tools like Bark and Custodio, or screen time controls on your kid's smartphone, and you're saying my kids are safe because I've set up parental controls to only let them have access to TVY or TG or PG or whatever the content rating is, you're deceiving yourself. You can't really outsource that shepherding that is really your responsibility to the technology, because the technology is being gamified and weaponized by the content curators and the content producers. So there's really no replacement for you as a shepherd. You have to be involved. You have to preview whatever it is your kids want to access online. You have to participate in what they're accessing and what they're being exposed to online, so that you can police that, so that you can regulate that, so that you can insert yourself and correct whenever is needed, or guide whenever it is needed, because your kids are going to be exposed to harmful media if they are engaged in finding things online. They're going to be exposed to harmful stuff. So you have to be participating in that process with your kids. Now, ideally, I would say, if your kids are interested in something, well, first of all, they shouldn't, from a first principles perspective, they shouldn't have the ability to get a device that has open access to the internet, and that they can use to explore content online, whether that's streaming media or audio or games, whatever the case would be. I mean, let's say you take your kid's iPhone and you say, lock it down with screen time controls, and say they can only download games that are rated PG. They can only access content and media that's rated PG. They can only listen to music that's rated PG. Wonderful, but you still can't let your kids just have that device with those restrictions and explore all the content that's available to them within those rating systems, because as I've just described, they're going to be coming across radicalization material in the process that falls within those restrictions or those categories. So ideally, what you should do is preview. If your kids are interested in something, if there's a new Netflix movie that comes out, or they hear about a movie from their friends, preview it. Yes, that means you might have to sit through a cartoon for 2 hours watching it all the way, so that you understand what is going to be presented to your kids. But it's worth it, right? That's the responsibility and the honor that you and I have as shepherds for our kids, is to guard their hearts and their minds from harmful influence. And so, yeah, that's part of your responsibility as being a parent. And if you don't have time, ideally you have a community of trust, of shared values around you, where you can go to other parents and ask the question, hey, what do you know about this new movie? Or have you seen this movie? What do you think about it? And you can talk to other parents who have your common value system, or maybe a really similar value system. And from that, you can know what their opinions are, and potentially what is safe for your kids. And so there's ways that you can, again, build community around you of like-mindedness. This is part of what I call building your arc. You build a community of people who are sharing life with you, participating in life with you, who have common values, and you can rely on them and their experiences and exposure and influences to help steer and guide you in a common way, and to reinforce your value system, and lean on them to help you understand these sorts of questions. Or preview yourself and also participate yourself. Don't just set your kids up with access to the content, even if your best friends have said it's appropriate. You actually need to sit down with your kids and participate along with them, whether that's a game that they're playing through an app store, or a video that they're streaming through, whatever the case would be. We do need to participate with our kids, so that when things do come up that aren't anticipated, or might might exceed one of those thresholds of our value system, we can see it firsthand and understand how they were exposed to it, and then use that as an opportunity to guide them towards correction and truth. So we talk about this at length in our digital health and cybersecurity seminar for parents. I just want to bring some of these things to your attention now in kind of short form, given that this conversation is hot right now around the criticisms of Steps and Narnia, and just bring to your attention again the fact that you can't outsource shepherding and parenting to technology providers, even the ones who are trying to give you controls as a parent to moderate access. You can't just outsource and rely on those tools themselves, because they're being gamified and they're weaponized, and that harmful content that is seeping into your kids' minds, that they're practicing and living out through the characterization and mimicry that they engage in as part of processing story and narrative, that is having a radicalization effect on your kids. And so you got to be very intentional about what those influences are and how they're exposed to them. And you just can't rely on the world to provide you the right guardrails. It has to come from you as an individual, from you as a parent, and from within your community of trust and like-minded friends and family members who are invested in your story and reinforcing your story, all together in community. So all that to say, again, a great example from Steps and Narnia of how you can't just leverage technology to do this for you. You can't outsource to a software provider. You can't outsource to the TV rating system. You can't outsource to Apple or Google or anybody else. The reality of parenting and shepherding your kids, especially when it comes to the exposure to online content that is harmful in nature. And you have to remember that the timeline for radicalization is very, very short. Again, we talk about this at length in our seminar, but the it used to be the U.S. government put out some statistics in recent years about the radicalization process and how long it takes. And they used to estimate that radicalization towards a fundamentally different worldview used to take about 6 months of careful and intentional radicalization by a party who's trying to radicalize somebody else. But the three key factors that accelerate radicalization are peer involvement, the frequency of exposure to the radicalization content. So peer involvement also includes like reinforcement amongst peers, the frequency of exposure, as well as the platform of exposure. Those are the three main accelerants to radicalization, to the point now that via online and digital consumption of content, and especially the social media spaces, that radicalization window has shrunk from 6 months down to a matter of weeks. It can be as short as days, but really it seems to be something like just 2 weeks. And so if your kids are exposed to some narrative via content online that falls within the rating system that is acceptable for your kid's age range or maturity level, if they're exposed to some radical ideology and they internalize that, and their friends are exposed to that same ideology and they act it out in a peer-to-peer way that's reinforcing those themes and those value systems, it is forming their worldview. It is forming how they're going to understand the world. And that is a radicalization process if it's contrary to the value system that you are trying to teach your kids and the worldview that you're trying to raise them according to, or according or by, I guess is the way to say it. All right, I'm going to stop talking now because I'm fumbling over my own words. I hope this has been helpful for you. Warning to you parents out there in terms of what you can rely on, what you can't, and really the importance of being a participant in your kids' online activities and really truly shepherding them through the entire sequence, end to end. There's no replacement for you as a parent, and it's worth it. It's your kids that you're talking about. It's their hearts and their minds and their souls, as well as their bodies and their property that we're protecting. So it's worth it. Don't outsource it. Don't leave it up to the radicalization process and the radicalizers, because they are out there and they're gamifying the system against you. So get involved, get in there, get on that device, get in the content, play the games. It's painful. On my phone, I have games that are designed for kids that are painful to play, to be honest, if we're being totally honest. But I do it for the sake of shepherding my kids' hearts and making sure that they are not being exposed to things that they shouldn't be. So take that responsibility on. It's important. It's worth it. Your kids are your kids, for crying out loud. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. For more information, check out our website, proactivesecurity.com. You can also find us on X. Our handle there is @proactivesec. And also on Substack, proactivesecurity.substack.com. I wish you well. Hope things are going well for you. And we will chat soon. Thank you very much.